Shalom, Israelites. This is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Alright, Israelites, I really ain't just been doing a lot of videos on the Exiles history, and I was just reading, a little of the prophet Malachi's history, 430 BCE. And then, I got to thinking, after reading it, about the conditions of the exiles. Now, the majority of the time when I'm doing Israelite history, I'm mostly talking about the Israelite nation that ran into Africa. I already proved it wasn't no 10 lost tribes, and I think I got a couple of videos talking about the exiles history. You know, if it wasn't no 10 lost tribes and we all went into Africa besides maybe 1%, and that it wasn't no 10 lost tribes, then I could show, Israelites, with the exiles when they, come home from Babylon, it was only a little small percentage, and that the 99% of the people went into Africa during the Babylonian Wars in the book of Jeremiah, and then how this little 1% that went to Babylon, and then when they come back, that'll be the exiles history, and it's something to study because this is where the Israelites that believe in the New Testament have to get a understanding, as well as the Israelite community in general. But if you understand the exiles history, because like I said, you would have to remember that we went into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, and the book of Jeremiah is going to be our last act on the promised land for the 99% for the Israelite nation, and that we was chased into Africa by way of, Judah. We had to get on down, and then I got some videos showing that, running into Egypt from the promised land. The land that we had was a skip and a hop, and it didn't take no time. I'm talking about, man, it didn't take no time, man. Probably a day, and we was, you know, in Africa, probably deep in Africa, and that I was in running distance and so forth, and we ran there, and how we didn't come back when the exiles were released from Babylon. These folks right here cover this history. These prophets right here cover that history, and then how, you know, when they come on, the ones that went into Africa in the book of Jeremiah never come out to be reunited with them because we had abandoned the covenant we was through. And I explained in a couple of, remember, I think a video that I got explaining how it couldn't be two covenants. It couldn't be two covenants, one broken and one not. And that when the covenant was broken by the 99%, that it was just a matter of time before it caught up with the exiles who were not doing right when they come back from Babylon. And that's why you got the prophets' history. If they had did right, it would have been the end of Tanakh history. If the exiles would have come back and did right, man, we would have vanished, and there wouldn't have been no need for the curses or the transatlantic slave trade, because Almighty Yah would have had a priestly nation that was trying to do right by Moses' law in place. And we know that didn't happen, that something serious happened. I'm talking about something real serious happened. And I want to explain to y'all that the exiles were dealing with the Babylonian scribes. They was dealing with the Babylonian scribes. And I can show this a little bit in history. It's from their history, but once we put it together and get an understanding, then we got that understanding, man, of what happened to us. But then it's kind of important to understand what happened to the exiles, especially for those who don't really trust in Almighty Yah, and then be believing in demigods, and then that if you understood the exiles history, that how you would just be believing in Almighty Yah, and you wouldn't be believing in a new created version of our history that come 500 years later, and that'd be the the Greek writings, you know what I'm saying, the New Testament. And I'm gonna go into why it was created too. But I want to talk about mostly the book of Jeremiah. I mean, not Jeremiah, but Malachi. But I will be speaking about the book of Nehemiah too, because they in the you know what I'm saying, they at the same time, and this is the end. This is the end for, you know what I'm saying. The prophet Ezra was there too, and but Nehemiah and Malachi, you know, the book of Malachi, man, it's the last book, man, before the Greeks show up, and we know that Almighty Yah, you know what I'm saying? I know the Almighty Yah didn't want the Greeks to come into our heritage, the Greeks to get into the Israelite heritage. You know, the prophet Malachi, 430 BCE, what was he talking about? What was the conditions of the exiles that went to Babylon? You know what I'm saying? That they made it back home. Greeks show up 98 years later, 332 BC. Did the Creator want the Greeks into Israelite heritage? You know, did the Creator want the Greeks, men, to get into the Israelite heritage and claim an Israelite heritage? Man, I'm going to show y'all some real slick stuff that went down on the exiles, and kind of like, you know, this is what give the hard is their say in our heritage. I already showed you that they was there since the mean that they was in our heritage since the since Joshua days. Man, since Joshua was in charge, and how the Amorites got into our heritage. I show y'all that already. You know, I show you how the Amorites, the Sepharvims that was placed in Samaria in 722 BCE were Amorites. But I show you before how the Amorites, their stock, got into our heritage and were servants in the temple and so forth, or whatever temple or congregation we build, how that they would, you know, be servants there. And when we was chased out the land, that how they basically had control. But the exiles were kind of like in the way of them getting control, but they succeeded in the end, because I explained how it couldn't be two covenants. It couldn't be one broken, that we went into Africa to do the Egyptian religion, and didn't come back home, man, to be with them that come home from Babylon, and that how we couldn't have two covenants, one broken and one not, and how it was all or nothing, and that how we couldn't do the covenant, man, up off the promised land. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna show you Israelites how our heritage slick went over to the Sephardists, man. You know, slick went over to them, and you know, they was already in our heritage as Amorites. And I'm gonna show you the conditions. You know, I could read all the books, man, and you know, explain the conditions of the people. Now, this is what you Israelites should do. Man, you should read each one of those books. You already see the timeline, and you should understand after you read each book that the Israelites were not successful or doing the right things. You know, the book of Esther, you know, you kind of like, you know, that's not, but the ones that dealing with the Israelites that come home, and that was in the land, and that how they didn't do right after Almighty Yah freed them by Cyrus during the Persian Wars, when they defeated the Babylonians, and then the exiles come home, and then how did they didn't do right But they make that history so blurry, and they blurred that history so good that most Israelites can't see through it and can't figure it out. You know, they think that the exiles history just kept on going all the way to 70 AD, and then we just got kicked out the land and went to North Africa, ran across North Africa to Spain and had a glorious time and wrote books and bam bam and all of those peoples and stuff that had the Israelite history going on in Spain. Israelites don't know nothing about the Khazars, the Sepharvims, the Edomites getting into our heritage and 130 BCE. They was in it already. I already proved that the Amorites was in our heritage since Joshua days when we come out, how they immediately got in our heritage, the Gabonites, and then how some scribes that kept Babylon's God's history was placed in our heritage in 722 BC. And then I want to show how that one of the priests, one of the Levites that had power back then, that how his son and his family, uh, uh, his son, he was already giving the Ammonite Moabites a place in the temple when the exiles come back, and how the prophet Nehemiah uh, had to get on him about it, but how it was already too late because his sons had already been bought and went over and had wives by the Sepharvims in Samaria. And they call them Samaritans at the time. And you know, as some of them they do now because that's where they're originally from. But they're Amorites. And then how did one of the Levite priest sons went over, meaning to them, meaning possibly had children. But understand this: after he had children with them, and then she would have kids, she could possibly have kids by other men, as women did back then. They wasn't loyal, and then but anyway, her kids with him, and then her kids go back off into her ethnic group, is not producing Israelites. It's not producing Israelites. It's not producing Israelites. And then that's what happened. And then that's how them folks got their start in our heritage besides being there already. But this give them men the priesthood and over basically the the Israelite heritage and so forth. It's that, you know, that they got one of the priest's sons, and then he had children by her, but her children would go back into their ethnic stock, claiming our heritage, and then that they wouldn't go back into our ethnic stock, which was destroyed and ran off the land. See, they don't want you to understand that it couldn't be two covenants. It couldn't be the exiles who come home from Babylon, who was a small percentage, that they did bad, but some kind of way survived all the way up to today, and just going through the problems that they going through now. No, Israelites don't understand that it's two groups of people been claiming our heritage since we abandoned it during the Babylonian Wars. Ashkenazi and the Sephardi's, or the Khazars and Ashkenazi, these two groups, and they've been having proxy wars over our heritage, and I'm gonna try to explain it, man, to where you know, you Israelites, man, can understand some of it. You know, where you Israelites can understand some of it. It ain't hard to understand. It's real easy to understand if you trust in Almighty Yah and you trust in Tanakh history, because that's what I'm relying on. You know, that's what I go by. All right, Israelites, I'm gonna start it off like this, and then I'm gonna read some of the some of the book of Jeremiah, but I want to show this. I I want to show this if I could just find this little part right here. All right, all right. I think this may help me a little bit. All right, all right. So we know that the exiles were doing real bad when they come home. That's why these prophets pop up to they was guiding the Israelites home, but writing down the conditions that the people was in and the state of mind and everything is what the prophet did, and that it was recorded that the people couldn't and wasn't doing the law, and then I showed that a lot of people was slipping into our heritage during them times under the title Nethinims, the Nethinims, and then I showed that how the Nethinims translate into them Hasmonean, the Hasmonean folks mean that the Hasmonean dynasty mean that mean eventually ended up mean with our heritage. But man, I got a video. The Nethinim is where the Hasmonean dynasty come from. I show you that the Ammonites, Moabites, and all them fused together with Edomites and Amorites, and then how that they would get fused in our heritage when the exiles were coming back from Babylon, and they are known as Nethinims in the in the Tanakh, in the book of man, I believe that it be in Ezra, and then how did they couldn't account for their heritage in our heritage. Nehemiah and them knew everybody, and Israelites knew all each other family, but here go a group of people that couldn't account for and couldn't show, proof of having the Israelite heritage. Back then everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody gonna know everybody. Mamas, daddies, and sons. That's why come we named them like that in the Bible. In the genealogies, we hear all of a sudden a group of people come that we can't name where they come from and who they descended from. I show you that the Amorites been in our heritage, and that the Sepharvims went home to Babylon. They got a free ride home to Babylon during the Babylonian Wars, because they kindred people took us to Babylon, and then they had went to Babylon with Hebrew names that they had been in our heritage. The scribes about 200 something years from 722 BC to 586 BC. Many had been in our heritage a good little while, and then they had Hebrew names, man. I show you in it tonight how we wasn't faithful to our heritage. We wasn't faithful at all to it, but them Nethinims is going to be where the Hasmoneans come from. And then I show you that the Hasmoneans were Edomite, Amorite, Moabites, and so forth. Well, the exiles would mix up with them. The exiles would mix up with them, and in this brother named Jadiah, Jadia, Jadia, Jadua. You know what I'm saying? He was the son of Johan, the high priest, during the exile period. You know what I'm saying? When they come back home, but dude wasn't right, man. He wasn't right because his son that they say they call him, that you have to be real slick, that you have to be real careful with with the with the Jewish version of our history, because they not gonna show the transition from the real Israelite heritage over, man, to them, and when it happened. They don't want you to ever know that. They don't want you to know that, because then you'll understand them and what went down with the Israelite heritage. But this brother, let me see if I can pull his name up. Man, he would go over into them Nethinim, the Nethinims, the Samaritans, and then would have kids by them, and then that child would go back off into his people, not off into our people, and then they would have our heritage, and then our heritage would be spread amongst them like that. You know what I'm saying? Let me see. All right, this guy right here. Look, man, the Levites. Look, you see. All right, the Levites have been. This is Nehemiah 22, and we know that this is in 445 to 432. This 432 is when Nehemiah finished his work, and it's like 100 years before the Greeks pop up, and that's why the prophet Malachi give his last ceremony, because it's over with. Man, it's over with, man. We couldn't recover because the 99% was in Africa doing Egyptian religion, so it was just a matter of time, man, before the exiles were destroyed, which happened so quietly and so forth. There go the prophet Ezra, man, right there. But when you get to Nehemiah 12, and then you get over to 22, look, all right, the Levites in the days of Elisheba, Jehoiada, and Johan, and Jehudah, the Jadiah, were recorded chief of the fathers, also the priests to the ring of doers of Persia. You know what I'm saying? But all right, the sons of the Levi, the chief of the fathers, were written in the book of the Chronicles, even unto the days of Johan, the son of Elish. All right, but his son right there, that dude, that Israelite son there, supposed to have went off, man, into the Samaritans, the Sebhardites, man, the Sebharavims, and then their kids would go back off into their people, not into our people, and then they would take our heritage with them. So he gave our heritage, man, to them too. But you see him, look, all right. Now they say that this, all right, we know that this is around, we'll say 443, and that that this brother here was probably younger than Ezra and so forth, or his father Elisha. We're gonna do some dates. You know what I'm saying with this too. All right. And now look here. Now we see that they got this road in history. That they got this road in history right here. Look. Judah's brother Manasseh married into the gubernatorial Sumerian family. So we know the Sumerians. The Sumerians are the folks that was placed in Samaria instead of the children Israel during the Assyrian times and so forth. So he went off into them, but their kids would go off into their people, not back into our people. So it would lose our ethnicity early, real early. But some of them try to say that they got nappy hair and hair like us, and oh man, it's a mess. But look, Judah's brother Manasseh married into the gubernatorial Sumerian family. The governor's daughter, the Nesiko, was given Manasseh in marriage to try to ease the tensions that exist between the Samaritans, men, and the Israelites. See, because they tried to come into the temple too. Man, they tried to get into the temple with us. They was trying everything. Man, they was trying everything. And I'm going to see if I can show some of that. But let's go to the, let's get to the book of Nehemiah. And I'm going to show you Elisha, his father or grandfather. That's probably going to be his grandfather. Elisha, the Levite, giving the temple over to them too. So if they got the temple, man, they didn't got some of our bloodline going into one of their children, and who went off, and their descendants went back off into the Amorite, Edomite stock, but claiming the Israelite heritage. She had a daughter, a daughter by Manasseh, and then them Edomites would go into her, but they not producing Israelites. You see what I'm saying? And then how that they would go back off into their own people, but claiming a Israelite heritage. You know, look here, all right. So we know that that Nehemiah was the governor in them days. He was a boss in them days coming back, and Ezra was the priest and scribe. You know, he the one that got our history right to where we can understand it today, even if they translate it in other people's name. You know what I'm saying? All right, look. So we know that the Ezra and Nehemiah and them gonna be mad that the priests and them mean that the Levites mean is going over into the Samaritans, taking our heritage, you know, with them, and then they slick right now today. I just posted a little video, man. I might go into it that showing how that they trying to lead us to them through the African Jews. You know, it's one of the most astonishing things in the world today is that the people from the transatlantic slave trade are claiming the Israelite heritage. And it's happening fast. But look here. Look, this is Nehemiah. On the day they read in the book of Moses in the audience of the people, and therein was found written that the Ammonites and the Moabites should not come into the congregation of Yah forever, because they met not the children of Israel with bread and with water, but hired Balaam against them, that he should curse them. Howbeit our Yah turned the curse into a blessing. Now it come to pass, when they heard the law, that they separated from Israel all the mixed multitudes. See, they had already know not to be messing with them folks anyway. And Elisha sons were the chief in that. All right, but they supposed to have separate. Look, and before this, Elisha, the priest, having the oversight of the chamber of the house of Yah, was allied unto Tobit. And Tobit was an Ammonite Moabite. You know, I got the video showing this about the Hasmoneans. And he had prepared for him a great chamber, where aforetime lay the meat offerings, the frankincense, and the vessels, and the tents of the corn, and the new wine, and the oil, which was given, which was commanded to be given to the Levites, and the singers, and the porters, and the offerings of the priests. So wherever we brung the tits and paid our dues, you know, at the temple, Elisha had put him in control of it, and then gave him a spot up in there. So they was already in the temple. It was a wrap. It was over with. You know, it was in the temple. It was done. The exiles could never recover from this, because it was already said the Moabite and the Ammonite can't come up in there. But then the Israelites go over into the Amorite Moabite stock, you know, in Samaria. You know what I'm saying? All right, look. But in this time was not I at Jerusalem, for in the 32 years of Asterisk, king of Babylon, come I unto the king, and after certain days obtained leave of the king, and now I come to Jerusalem, and understood of the evil that Elisha did for Tobiah, in preparing him a chamber in the courts of the house of Yah. Now we got to remember that when prophet Nehemiah came, all right, let's see how many years it was after after they returned in 538 or 37 BC. Let's see the timeline. All right, 537 minus because it's towards the end. 432. Man, that's 105 years Man, that's 105 years being from Babylon when the prophet Nehemiah pull up. Well, let's even go to 45, and let's see how much time that is. 445. Man, that's 92 years. Man, that's 92 years. That's 92 years. So he back 92 years. You know what I'm saying? Or after they done come home, 92 years done passed when he pull up and the brother done gave after them coming back, and then they start falling off fast, start tricking off, giving the enemies the temple where they shouldn't have had been, no Amorites and Moabites. They go all the way back to Torah law that the creator set forth and so forth. But you see what it says that 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 and I come to Jerusalem and understood the evil that Elisha did for Tobiah in preparing him a chamber in the courts of the house of Yah, and it grieved me sore. Therefore I cast out all the household stuff of Tobiah out of the chamber. Then I commanded, and they cleansed the chamber, but it was over with. Cleansing it and all that ain't gonna do nothing. Look, and then he put some new people in charge and so forth, but they didn't do no good. Look, because after you read this, look, and it come to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem, they was trying to come in on the Sabbath, men from everywhere, and he had to stop that. He got real violent, trying to get them to stop from coming in on the Sabbath, threatening them folks and so forth, and then they'll stop coming in on the Sabbath. But this is what the prophet Nehemiah said. And it come to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem had to be dark before the Sabbath, I command that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be open till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set I at the gates, that they should not burden be brought in on the Sabbath day. So the merchants and sellers, all kind, were lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. Then I testified against them and said unto them, why lodge ye against the wall? If ye do so, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth come they not no more on the Sabbath. And I commanded the Levites that they should cleanse themselves, that they should come and keep the gates to satisfy the Sabbath day. Remember, O my Elohim, concerning this also, and spare me according to the greatness of thy mercy. In those days I also saw, he said, Jews that had married wives of Ashdod and Ammon and the Moabites. See, it's over with. It's over with. They couldn't come into our heritage. They couldn't come into our heritage. But they did, and they got it now. And they got it now. That's why come the end had to come real fast. That's why come the end had to come real fast. And that's when you get the book, the prophet Malachi. And when you read it, the end had to come fast, because those Israelites were that they come home from Babylon, that's supposed to be the representation of the covenant that we failed, that they was trying to get it kickstart and do right from then on out, that they failed, and it was over with. I explained it couldn't be two covenants, one broken and one not broken. That's why come we get to the book of Malachi, and I'm going to read it from the Tanakh. Malachi in Hebrew means Malachi, meaning my messenger or my angel. Malachi was a contemporary of the prophet Nehemiah at the time of his oracle take place 100 years after the first remnants, men come home. The Hebrew nation returned from the Babylonian captivity. Yeah, see, I'm just showing you all this. Knew all this already. Alright, so now let's get to the book of Malachi. Let's get to the book of Malachi, and then we're going to see if we get an understanding what he's saying from the Tanakh. We're going to read it from the Tanakh. You know what I'm saying? Not the English translated versions and so forth. Alright, let me Yeah, Israelites. The Israelites was passing heritage off. That's what made the Greeks show up. And then I'm gonna show y'all how the Ptolemy, who was pharaohs and uh, uh, Egyptian kings and pharaohs, Greek Egyptian kings, and how sort of Ptolemy the first, and then how his dynasty would fight over the promised land with the Seleucids. These is Alexander's bodyguard. You know, man, they had to pull up the Greeks because the exiles were passing heritage, had to put their lights out, and then that's what happened to them. And I'm gonna show you who how it come about is because the Israelites wasn't doing right. You know what I'm saying? We wasn't doing right, and we didn't get right in the end when the exiles had the chance to do right. Even though we would have perished in Africa, anyway. But we wouldn't have never made it to the transatlantic slave trade, and I would have just disappeared off the earth. And those Israelites that come home from Babylon would have been the representation of Yahweh. But we know that these prophets' history right here show otherwise, and that something terribly went wrong. And then these different groups, ethnic groups, claiming our heritage. How did that happen? Something had to happen to the exiles. If we, the Israelites, went into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, and then the exiles were still around, and then all these peoples claiming the Israelite heritage everywhere that is not us, then something had to happen to the exiles. You know, because the Creator wouldn't let the Greeks get into our heritage, claiming and mixing with us. All right, the book of Malachi, 430 BC. Let's see what it say. All right, let's put this right here. We can get some good light on this. All right. All right. And pronounced the word of the Elohim meant to Israel through Malachi. I have shown you love, said the Elohim, but you ask, how have you shown us love? After all, declares the Elohim, Esau is Jacob's brother, yet I have accepted Jacob and have rejected Esau. I have made his hills a desolation and his territory a home for beasts of the desert. If Edom thinks, though crushed, we can build the ruins again, this said the Elohim of hosts. They may build, but I will tear down, and so they shall be known as the region of wickedness, the people damned forever of the Elohim. Your eyes shall behold it, and you shall declare, great is the Elohim beyond the borders of Israel. And sure enough, man, you see them Edomites in ruins now, and I got videos talking about the son shall honor his father, and the slave his masters. Now, if I am a father, where's the honor due me? And if I am a master, where's the reverence due me? Said the Elohim of hosts to you, O priests who scorn my name. But you ask, how have we scorned your name? You offer defiled food on my altar, but you ask, how have I defiled you? By saying the table of the Elohim can be treated with scorn. When you present a blind animal for sacrifice, it doesn't matter. When you present a lame or sick one, it doesn't matter. Just offer it to your governor. Will he accept you? Will he show you favor? Said the Elohim of hosts. Man, the exile was bringing wounded, diseased sheep and stuff to the temples and stuff. You know, they was already giving bad stuff, probably because them folks was up in there. But this towards the last, Prophet Malachi, Nehemiah had cleansed everything. You know what I'm saying? And got them folks up out of there. But the folks started bringing bad sheets and all kind of stuff, man. And we just didn't care no more. It was over with. The exiles had to be destroyed. And this is the history showing it. This is the last book before the Greeks pull up. Let me see. Be gracious to us. This is what you have done. Will he accept any of you? No, the governor ain't gonna accept no bad sheep. Back then, the Elohim of Hoa has said, if only you would lock my doors and not kindle fire and my altar to no purpose. I take no pleasure in you, said the Elohim of hosts, and I will accept no offerings from you. Far from where the sun rises to where it sets, my name is honored among the nations, and everywhere incense and pure oblations are offered to my name. For my name is honored among the nations, said the Elohim of hosts, but you profane it when you say the table of the Elohim is defiled, and the meat and the food can be treated with scorn. You say, oh, what a bother, and so you degrade it in the Elohim of hosts, and you bring the stolen, the lame, and the sick, and you offer such an oblation. Will I accept you? Will I accept it from you? Said the Elohim. A curse on the cheat who has an embellished male in his flock, for he has vowed sacrifice a blemished animal to the Elohim. For I am a great king, said the Elohim of hosts, and my name is reverenced among the nations. So the exiles was bringing lame, sick, diseased sheep to the temple, even after Nehemiah and then got them folks up out of there and then kind of corrected to give the folks a chance. And the folks was bringing cheap animals, probably selling them to them other folks, and then bringing the date oblations to the temple that was, messed up and no good and stuff, the worthless stuff, because people had, your cattle was your money back then. And now, O priest, this charge is for you. This is talking about Elishib them. Elishib was the priest back then, him and his son, and I just showed how they say that Judah's brother Manasseh went over to the Samaritans, and let me show y'all who the Samaritans is. Look, you see how that Israelite there, these the exiles, these the last ones, and this is the ones that the Tanakh is mostly talking about. Elishib sons and so forth. But you see how he went over to the Samaritans. All right, we're gonna do this like this. We're gonna go to Second Kings. I'm gonna just do this real quick in this other Bible, so I don't lose that page. So I turned right to it. Second Kings 17:24. Look, this is in 722 BC. These folks is placed in our land, and these are the folks, the Sebharavims, the Sebhardis today, that one of the priest's sons went over to and had a daughter by, and then his daughter would go back off into they people and stuff. Look, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon. This is 2 Kings 17:24. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Cud, and from Abe, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, and they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So that's how the Sebhard is. The Sepharvaim's gonna get into our heritage is that one of the priests sons gonna go have a daughter by one of them, and then they would let them folks off into the temple and so forth. So in the book of Malachi, that's who they gonna be talking about, them, and then them bringing terrible stuff, terrible broke down sheep and sick diseased sheep. They gonna probably, whoever riding with them gonna probably be doing that out of spite, knowing that Nehemiah and them done cleaned it up. They ain't trying to support right and stuff. That's why these folks show up and take Egypt in the promised land over. Is because the exiles was real wicked, real wicked, real wicked, real wicked, and they heritage couldn't stand. Their heritage couldn't stand. That's why come 500 years go by, and then they come with a godson that we didn't recognize that terminology or concept in Tanakh and Torah history. Alright, let's finish reading Malachi. Alright, so we know who the priest is. Well, we know who the priest is. We know who the priest is. We know who the priest is. And now the priest, this charge is for you, men, unless you obey, men, unless you lay it to heart and do honor to my name, said the Elohim of hosts, I will send a curse and turn your blessings into curses. Indeed, I have turned them into curses because you do not lay it to heart. I will put your seed under a ban, and I will strew dung among your faces, the dung of your festal sacrifices, and you shall be carried into the heat. Know then that I have sent this charge to you, that my covenant with Levi may endure, said, know that I have sent this charge to you, that my covenant with Levi may endure, said the Elohim. I had with him a covenant of life and well-being, and I gave it to him of reverence, which he showed me, for he stood in way of my name. Yeah, their original father, man, he gave them the covenant, but the exile, the priests, was doing real wicked and evil, as you see what he said from the beginning. Look, proper rulings were in his mouth, and nothing perverse was on his lips. He served me with complete loyalty, and held the many back from iniquity. For the lips of the priest guard knowledge, and men seek rulings from his mouth. For he is a messenger of the Elohim of hosts. But you have turned away from the course. You have made the many stumble through your rulings. You have corrupt the covenant of the Levites, said the Elohim of hosts, and I in turn have made you despicable and veiled in the eyes of all the people, because you discard my ways and show partially in your rulings. Have you not all one Father? Did not one Yah create us? Why do you break faith with one another, profaning the covenant of our ancestors? Judah has broken faith, and abhorring things have done been done in Israel and in Jerusalem. For Judah had profaned what is holy to the Elohim, and what he desired, and espoused daughters of alien gods. See, that's what he did. Meaning, he went and got some daughters by them folks from Samaria, and then their daughter go back off into their people and have kids, and then they are not Israelites, but they claim an Israelite heritage. The Sephardims doing this is how they got into our heritage. In all the history that you read after the book of Malachi, in them is gonna be them in our heritage. So all the history that's created after Malachi, man, is gonna be them in our heritage and their history. And Israelites to use their history as if it's our history, but they're wrong. Look, may the Elohim lead to him who does this. Judah be broken the faith of harm and have been done in Israel, for Judah hath profaned what is holy to the Elohim, what he desires, and espoused daughters of alien gods. May the Elohim lead to him who does this. No descendants dwelling in the tents of Jacob, and presenting offerings to the Elohim of hosts. And this you do as well. You cover the altar of the Elohim with tears, weeping, and moaning, so that he refuses to regard the oblations anymore and to accept what you offer. But because Elisha let them folks come in there, and then they bringing bad stuff in there, they bringing bad food in there, so the whole priesthood was corrupt in Nehemiah days. And I just showed y'all Elisha. This is who the scripture's gonna be talking about, his descendants, because they went over to the Moabites and the Ammonites, as I showed already. And then that was abomination, and they couldn't do that, bring them into the temple. But they was in the temple now during the exile time. So Malachi closing it off. It's over with. So when you read this, know for sure that Elisha's sons, Elisha's sons, Jehudiah brother Manasseh, which he ain't just mentioned, meaning the Tanakh, that I see is that they went over into the Samaritans and had a daughter, and then the daughter would go off into their peoples and spread our heritage. You know, she went back into the Amorite, Moabite stock, Amorite man, Edomite man, and had kids, and they would stay in their stock from then on out. And then that's why them folks, you know, look like this. That's why they look like this. I mean, that's why come Israelites do see some of them, because they mix with Hamites, and then they see them when the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, and they ran across North Africa. Some of them stayed, but they went up to Spain. And the Israelites think that that was our heritage and us up there. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. We was in Africa in the Sahara waiting to get transported to the transatlantic slave trade. All right, so we see how them folks in Yadin, we see that the book of Malachi, man, is talking terrible about the priests and the wicked stuff, man, that they did. Look, the one seek but godly folk, so be careful your life breath and let no one break faith with the wife of your youth. For all right, so he talking in. All right, behold, I am sending my messenger to clear the way before me, and the Elohim whom ye seek shall come to us temple suddenly. And as for the angel of the covenant that ye desire, he is already coming. But who can endure the day of his coming, and who can hold out when he appears? For he is like a smelter of fire and fuller's slayer. He shall act like a smelter and a purger of silver, and he shall purify the descendants of the Levi and refine them like gold and silver, so that they shall present offerings in righteousness. Then the offerings of Judah and Jerusalem shall be pleasing to them. And man, it was over with. Greeks show up. The Greeks show up. You know, the Greeks show up. You know, Prophet Malachi tell us to, in the last days, to pray in the fire and so forth. But this is what I want to show that you see in 430 BC. You know, in Nehemiah, the priests, he come back home. They done already done gave everything to the Ammonites, Moabites. Malachi condemned the priesthood, that how wicked they was and how it was over with and no good, and how Almighty I ain't accepting nothing from them. We know the Greeks. The Greeks show up 98 years later, and that's the end of Israelite history. And then I want to go into this, man, to show you that it was the end of Israelite history. Is that man, we know that the Jews married into the Greeks. Look, that the Jews married into the Greeks, and the Greeks married into the Jews. You know, that's without question. That's recorded history. So we know ain't no Israelites did that. We know ain't no Israelites did that. All right. This is a little something right here. And then now they try to say that Jehudia had a son named Onassis. Onassis, but that's false. That's false. That's false. And that how our heritage was cut off, but how that when he went and made it with them Samaritans and had a daughter, and she went over into her folks and had children. Her children went over into their people and had children, that they presented one of theirs as being us. Because I got a video showing you how they forged their name in the genealogy, how that the person name ain't in the genealogy, but all of a sudden he done pop up as a priest in their genealogy, and how that they not certain about, you know what I'm saying, that person, man, on NASA's name and so forth. But you see, look, the Ptolemy ran, you know what I'm saying, what was the rulers of Egypt and the Promised Land, and then the Seleucids. These are Alexander's generals inherit their descendants and you know their empire fighting over the promised land, and then it would look something like this. Let me see if I can pull that up. So we know that after the exiles messed up real bad, that the that 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 Almighty Yah wouldn't allow the Greeks and the Romans, man, to get in our heritage. And then I could show that the Seleucids were faux Ashkenazi, and that the Ptolemies backed the Subharavims, and that's why they was able to write books and do a lot of translations and so forth, because they was back in the Subhardis, the Ptolemy was, and you can actually see the proxy wars in the Promised Land if you look at the Seleucids interaction with the Jews in Scythopolis, Bethshan, and then how the Ptolemies would fight them, and then how the Hasmoneans would fight the folks in Scythopolis and so forth. That ain't nothing but the proxy wars between Ashkenazi and the Sephardics. Ashkenazi come into our heritage under Scythians during the Babylonian Wars, when they chased us into Africa because we said we was going to do Egyptian religion. But look here. None of them folks dealing with Israelites from then on out. They dealing with the folks that inherited our heritage, and that was brung in with the Samaritans, bringing them in and helping them and so forth. Because, you know, we know that the Persians controlled Egypt, so we know Alexander was going to go all the way to Egypt, man, to take over, which he did, and then his bodyguards would take control, and then they'll pick who they want to be in control and so forth. And then that's why it was a look, Lechimus dynasty. And this is Alexander's bodyguard too. This is his personal bodyguard and tutor and so forth. This is the person who he really trusts. He was Jewish, and then the Lechimus married into the Ptolemies. I got some history, a lot of documented history going into this that I'm going to probably start releasing, how the Ptolemies and the Lechimus were slick undercover Jews after so long. Yes, yes. Look, the Lechimus dynasty and such and such was one of the immediate bodyguards of Alexander during his Persian campaigns. And his descendants, the 46 co-high priests of Israel, was Lechimus. Now, how would a Greek get in control of the Israelite heritage unless something had happened to the exiles? Something had happened to the exiles. And look here. Look, that's the Seleucid kingdom going, fighting over the promised land, and then that's the Ptolemies. And then how that they would, they would fight over the promised land. The Ptolemies backed the Sephardics and the Edomites and so forth, whereas the Seleucids backed the Ashkenazi under the name Scythian and the Discopolis cities. And it's easy meant to see in history that I got some of this down. Look, Bethshan, look. Bethshan, that's Scythopolis. Bethshan is mentioned in written sources in the third to second century BC, describing, describing the conflict between the Ptolemies and the Seleucids, inheritors of the empire of Alexander the so-called Great, over the control of the promised land that they call Israel, and were a reference to the wars of the Hasmoneans gained independence from the Seleucids. You know, the Hasmoneans gonna be backed by the Seleucids and so forth. Those are Edomites. Those are the Nethinims. Those are the Nethinims and all the mixed peoples that we didn't destroy, that inherited our heritage. They would be claiming the Israelite heritage, being Nethinims coming from Babylon in the book of Ezra. I think Ezra or maybe Nehemiah and in how the Nethinims were the accumulation of the people that couldn't prove their heritage and prove that they was Israelites, like, the rest of our folks could, that knew each other fathers that go all back. And here a group of people pop up during the Babylonian wars that we couldn't, and then they would pass our heritage over to the other folks in Samaria and so forth. Man, it's all kind of connections. But look, reference to the wars, the Hasmoneans gaining independence from the Seleucids. So that's gonna be the Edomites getting away from Ashkenaz, who worked it through the Seleucid Empire and so forth. At the beginning of the Hellenistic period, the towns was located at the top of the tail only, and during the Seleucid second century BC, it was accorded the status of Polish Greek. And at that time, when the Romans was down with Ashkenazi too, and town compassed Israel north and of the tail where remains of residential areas and period was uncovered the houses of bricks. All right, but Scythopolis was conquered and destroyed by the Hasmoneans. So that's gonna be the Sebhardists backed by the Ptolemies or whoever fighting Ashkenazi in Scythopolis, because they settled during the Babylonian Wars in ancient Bethshan that become known as Scythopolis, and how Ashkenazi been in our heritage. But the Hasmoneans are Amorite, Moabite, Edomites that was backed by the Ptolemies, and how that they will fight the Seleucids and so forth. And the Seleucids, you see, this is when they started the proxy wars, when they had the Ptolemies for the Sebhardis and so forth, and then Ashkenazi for the Scythians, and the Seleucids for Ashkenazi, and then that would grow into religions, Christianity for Ashkenazi and Islam for the Sebhardis, and how that they will have proxy wars and so forth. But look, you see, the Hasmoneans fought against them, and and so forth. But look, the Roman period. This is Scythopolis. The Roman general during Pompey effectively established Roman rule in Judea. Scythopolis played a central role in the administration of the area. See, that's Scythians, the Romans giving Ashkenazi control, you know what I'm saying, and some say-so in our heritage. Look, granted special privileges. Scythopolis began the count of years from its attaining the status of Roman polis. It was the largest city of the Discopolis, a league of 10 Hellenized cities, 9 of them east of the Jordan River. Public construction in the new urban center, Scythopolis, in the valley southwest of the town, was beginning in the first century, was very known. But that was the city of the Scythians, Scythopolis, and I got a lot of history. Man, if you look at them Ashkenazi videos, now something had to happen to the exiles in order for all them folks to get in. And then I show in 130 BCE, 130 BCE, John Harnicus, man, converted. These gonna be all Sephardim Edomites right here. All them Sephardim Edomites in our heritage off of a false illegal marriage that Almighty Yah say wasn't no good from the beginning and so forth. And then how his daughter, women among them, Amite Moabites would go off into her people and have children and then make them priests, because dude was the governor and so forth. So he would make her children by the other folks governors and priests and so forth. And then they would have the Israelite heritage from being in it since the Joshua days and so forth. Man, we all messed up Israelites. That's why Almighty Yah say we get a whole new covenant after we had broke the old covenant. And then you go to Jeremiah 31, 31, because we need a new covenant, because look how the old covenant it's gone and tinted and messed up. You see what I'm saying? So we need a new covenant. And Almighty Yah again is one. Almighty Yah again is one. Look, Jeremiah 31:31. See, a time is coming, declares the Elohim, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, and will not be like the covenant I made with their fathers when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, a covenant which they break, though I was espoused to them, declares the Elohim. See, them folks that got our old heritage is still trying to live by the old covenant. Still trying to live by the old covenant, which Almighty Yah is gracious, because when this new covenant come in, that the old one, they gonna be stuck with. Alright, Israelites, we see how the exiles passed everything over to the Greeks and them other folks, and how they been fighting over our heritage. I'm gonna go a little more into detail, but it's easy to understand that the exiles were, the priests and them was messing up so bad in the book of Nehemiah that's why come Malachi came quickly, the messenger, telling them that it was over and how wasn't nothing accepted from them. And then lights went out, the Greeks show up. And then you got Greeks claiming Israelite heritage and so forth. And ain't nothing, you Israelites can do to change this, that the people in the New Testament were not the Israelites, and that those folks who are descendant from them people who took our heritage over are them. And then that's why come they got false history about God's sons coming to save and all that old stuff. Alright, Israelites, this is a message from the Israelite Brotherhood. Man, I pray that everybody got a understanding. It's easy to understand this Israelite history. Shalom, Hebrews.